Welcome to Season 5, Episode 16 of the Outlap F1 podcast, part of the Ship It Studios podcast network, and this is the 2023 Spanish Grand Prix race review. I am your host, James, along with my wonderful co-hosts, Andy and Cody. Gentlemen, how you doing tonight? Cody, you go first.
Doing all right. Just been up early for the race and just hanging out, doing stuff around the house. But yeah, all in all, having a nice weekend. Lamenting going back to work tomorrow.
A little bit of the Sunday blues. Andy, hanging up in the beautiful northern Wisconsin wilderness. How you doing? How's your internet signal?
Greetings from the Northwoods. The internet signal is surprisingly better than the last time I was up here, although I don't think it's good enough to get me on camera tonight. So for everybody else's sanity, so at least so they can hear me, we're just going to go sans camera. But other than that, it's been working good. Was able to watch the race this morning, so I was able to put the agenda together earlier. So looks like other than you seeing my wonderful face, and that's okay. Nobody's going to miss that. I guess we're good to go.
It's all good, Andy. Much like me and Cody, you two have a face for radio, so I think we're all good. We do have a race to talk about. I guess you can call it a race. But before we get into any of that, I can remind everybody that you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Discord, Reddit, and YouTube at F1 Podcast. You can check out our link tree on our Twitter profile page. Do us a solid and click like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, or click that 5-star button if you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can email the show at chatnow@outlapf1.com, where you'll find all of our old episodes on our website at www.outlapf1.com, including our beginner episode back on episode 4 of last season. Outlap F1 Nation continues to step up. Andy from the Northwoods, why don't you tell me about that?
Yeah, as always, big shout-outs to Dean Warwick, Yuri Dolchester, Paul Weaver, Quentin Warden, Kevin Kelly, you have a special message for, Regan Stanzik, Timothy Brown, and Jonathan Scott. Kevin, I've got lots of open road ahead of me. If you want to cash in and give me that 2-liter of Jameson you were talking about this morning, I'm all in after this race, I got to tell you.
And you too can help promote the show by going to the link in our episode description. You can also check out Manscaped for all your manscaping needs and use code OUTLAP, OUTLAP, for 20% off and free shipping. Also this week, our sponsor, as always, is the Portage Park Development Project, a thriving community in the Upland Metaverse. If you are from Chicago like us, Portage Park might sound familiar. That's because the Upland Metaverse is based on real-world cities and properties, and Portage Park is an actual neighborhood in Chicago, and we want to show the best Portage Park has to offer. Come join us. Links to the Portage Park Discord server, racing track maps, and socials are in our podcast show notes. We hope to see you in the Metaverse. All right, moving in to the headlines of the day. Cody, once again, I will start with you. What do you got for me?
All right, my headline of the day is Pivot. There was a lot of that going on this weekend. A lot of upgrades to cars that we saw. Different package on same package on the Mercedes as we saw in Monaco, but much more revealing this time around. Mercedes go up. Meanwhile, Ferrari goes down. They had a different side pod package themselves, and they seem to be having the usual Ferrari trouble of finding their groove.
Yeah, similar to what I've got. I said everyone is different. Everything is the same. Lots of new upgrades and car designs out there, and yet the result is the same. Max Verstappen is king right now, and doesn't look like anybody's going to be knocking him off his throne anytime soon. Andy, what do you got for your headline of the day?
My headline is the lack of rain in Spain caused James and I nothing but pain in the GP today.
Very nice.
And the lack of the chicane.
Also true.
All right, thank you for your headlines, boys. And now we will move into our qualifying recap. Andy, it's your moment to shine.
I don't know if we're going to have music for this, but I will put it in the post. So we did have a qualifying session on Saturday, and going out in P20, was Logan Sargent, who's having himself a bit on the struggle bus recently. P19, Charles Leclerc. P18, that was a shocker to have Leclerc not getting out of Q1. First time since Monaco 2019, he does not get out of Q1. P18 was Alex Albon. P17, Kevin Magnussen. P16 was Valtteri Bottas. Advancing through to Q2, but going no farther, in P15 saw Yuki Tsunoda. P14, Nick De Vries. P13, Joe Granu. P12, another surprise here with the upgraded Mercedes. That was George Russell. P11 was Sergio Checo Perez. Again, another surprise here. Interesting qualifying session. The top 10 from 10 to 1. P10 saw Oscar Piastri. P9, Fernando Alonso. P8, Nico Hulkenberg. P7 was Esteban Ocon. P6, Lance Stroll. P5, Lewis Hamilton. P4, Pierre Gasly. P3, Lando Norris. P2, Carlos Sainz. And in P1 with a lap time of 1:12.272, new track record, Max Verstappen.
Thank you, Andy. Yeah, as you mentioned, a few surprises up and down the grid here. I'll start with my guy, Charles Leclerc, qualifying in 19th. Ended up starting the race in the pit lane after doing some work on the rear of that Ferrari. Whew, that was a little bit upsetting, disappointing to say the least. I didn't get to watch qualifying live. I had my nephew's graduation party, so watched it later in the day, and kind of wish I hadn't now, looking back, because I wasn't expecting that sort of finish. Charles kept claiming as if something was wrong with the car. I'd like to think that there was for him to finish there. They did change some things, but nothing really came out of what actually was the difference there. So just a disappointing day for Charles. And then, George Russell and Sergio Checo Perez both leaving in Q2. So thought we had a chance to see some good overtakes from all three of them. And we saw some overtakes from two of them, and it just so happened wasn't my guy. So, Cody, any takeaways from Saturday?
Takeaway was that Andy and I were very, very far off on our qualifying time guesses. We were off by several seconds, but Max Verstappen ends up taking it with that lap record. It's very impressive, and it was really funny to see him get out of his car, heading out to do his interviews, and he takes a look back and he does a double take because he sees Lando Norris in the P3 slot and goes over to congratulate him. So that gave me a bit of a laugh. Other than that, really weird qualifying session with Charles going out in Q1, Sergio Perez just barely squeaking through onto Q2, but then going no farther. And I think at the end of Q1, like Hulkenberg was up near the top in like P2 or P3, and I sent Andy a text being like, "What is going on here?" Really surprised by how topsy-turvy it was, considering it was dry.
Yeah, so Andy, Cody mentioned your boy Lando finishing in third for qualifying. Highlight of your season so far, or what?
Probably the first time I was able to get kind of really jubilant and start banging on my table in happiness for a change. It was interesting. The conditions just kind of came to them. It was the strangest thing. Apparently they need cool, semi-damp, a little bit of wind, almost a thunderstorm in the area. And apparently that makes the car just hook up, because both of them found basically an extra second. I mean, you look at the practice times, they're around P9, P10 if they're lucky. And then here they are. Piastri all of a sudden goes P2 in one of the sessions, and he was like 4 purple mini sectors in the second sector. I couldn't believe it. I didn't know what the heck was going on. I thought it was in some strange universe. But hey, they were able to get it done at least over the course of one lap. Sadly, that was not to be a harbinger of good things to come. But at least for a Saturday, hey, it was fun.
Yeah. And we saw Max Verstappen in first for FP1, FP2, FP3, and ultimately qualifying. So I wonder if that's a little bit of foreshadowing of how Sunday would turn out. But we will get into that here as we drop the flag. Go lights out, and we will start with the back markers, where we find Logan Sargent, unfortunately, all the way back in P20. Valtteri Bottas having not a great season, finishing in 19th today. K-Mag in 18th. Lando Norris drops all the way down to 17th. Alexander Albon in 16th. Nico Hulkenberg in 15th. Nick De Vries in 14th. And Oscar Piastri in 13th. Cody, where do you want to start with back markers?
I think, unfortunately, we have to start with Lando Norris, who despite his excellent qualifying performance, kind of shot himself in the foot right out of the gate during the race. Was losing a little bit of ground to Lewis Hamilton, and in trying to kind of recover from that, he ran into the back of Lewis Hamilton and took out a good chunk of his front wing, which required him to pit immediately and pretty much destroyed his race from there. I don't think he ever was going to recover from having to pit that early, and yep, finished well outside of the points. It was very sad to see.
Andy, what do you think about that incident that ultimately ruined Lando's day on lap 1?
The one part of his overall game that I still have is a little bit of suspect. He's elite in a lot of levels, but lap 1 has sometimes been his undoing because I think he gets a little yitty, and he wants to get going and he wants to try to get as far up as he can before the inevitable pace of the car shows itself or something like that. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, I almost screamed from my hotel room this morning, discretion is the better part of valor. Because that's what was needed. If he loses 2 spots, you're still P5. That's still really good. And at least then we see what the rest of the race holds. But unfortunately not to be. He drops all the way to the back and race over at that point, really.
Yeah, definitely a disappointing start to the day for the McLaren driver. Let's say Nick DeVries, not a great day. Once again, I mean, he finished where he started in 14th, lap back behind Max Verstappen, and behind his teammate yet again, who Yuki got screwed by a penalty, which I'm sure we'll talk about here when we get to the midfield. But once again, behind the pace of his teammate after having a bit of a bright spot in Monaco. So things don't seem to be great there with that side of the AlphaTauri garage. But also Valtteri Bottas. Man, I went from dogging the guy. Yeah, I went from dogging the guy all the time to really starting to kind of like the guy. To now I think you just said it well, Cody. He just looks washed. What do you think's going on with him?
I don't know. He sounded pretty much like he'd given up by the end of the race. He was purposely trying to hold up other cars. He didn't even really seem to get a command from the team to do so. They got on the radio and said he had 2 cars behind. He's like, "Yep, I'll hold him up for Joe." And he knew that his race was already pretty much in the toilet at that point. And I mean, I guess good on him for being that willing to play the team game. Seemed pretty much always willing to do that at Mercedes, but it's really not looking good for him at this point. I mean, Zhou Guanyu is not like super rookie anymore. He's in his like 2nd or 3rd season at this point, but Valtteri Bottas definitely has a lot more of that experience, and it's not showing right now.
Yeah, the ass man is driving like ass. I think that's all we can say.
Good way to put it.
Andy, anybody else in the back markers you want to touch on?
I did want to touch a little bit on our resident American, Logan Sargent, who, I don't know if he ever would listen to such a show as ours, but stop putting the weight of the world on your shoulders, bud. It's okay. I think there's talent there. Just relax and go do what you do. Because he's got the whole weight of the world on his shoulders, and he's cracking under it, and I don't get it.
Yeah, definitely disappointing, both from qualifying and on Sunday for Logan. Yeah, I think you said it pretty well there, Andy. It seems like he's taking on all the pressure, and he just kind of needs to relax and do what he does because he's pretty damn good at it.
Absolutely.
All right, let's go ahead and move up to the midfield where we find Yuki Tsunoda dropped down to 12th after a penalty. Charles Leclerc in 11th outside the points. So first to finish in the points, Pierre Gasly with 1 point in 10th place. Zhou Guanyu in 9th. Esteban Ocon in 8th. Fernando Alonso down in 7th. Kind of surprising there. Lance Stroll in 6th to finish ahead of his teammate. Carlos Sainz drops to 5th from 2nd place. And Sergio Checo Perez climbs all the way from 11th to 4th to finish just off the podium. I guess we can start with Charles Leclerc. Man, that sucked. I thought maybe I get to see at least a little bit of overtaking from my guy. And I kind of did, but really didn't. And I didn't really understand what Ferrari was doing. At first, it's like, okay, they're going to slap on the hards and start the race and play the long game. Maybe hope for a safety car at some point. But then I think it was lap 16 or 17, and he was already coming off the hards, which I guess ends up really nobody did all that great on the hards, but a lot of drivers went a lot longer on the softs than Charles went on the hards. So, and then later in the race, he went back to the hards, and it just wasn't working for him at all. So, very disappointing day for both sides of Ferrari. Sainz to start the day in second and only finish in fifth. They just don't have that race pace. Hopefully with them pivoting into these different side pods, they can get something figured out maybe by the end of the year. But I got a little bit more for them later in the show, but it's not going to be anything good. And Ferrari's just not in a good place right now.
Yeah, definitely agree. It's crazy to see how hard the Ferrari cars are on their tires, that they're not able to. And like you said, the hards were not really a good tire for anybody this race, but Ferrari couldn't even make the hards last as long as the Mercedes were going on their soft tires, and I think that just speaks volumes as to their tire management.
Yeah, and it's like Leclerc's never really been known as a great tire manager, and I don't really think Sainz has either. I guess I'd be interested just like if Checo Perez could just drive the Ferrari for one race to see if he can be better with tires, or if it literally is just the car. But I think it might just be the car.
Yeah.
Well, you know what wouldn't surprise me if
Andy, where you want to go, or go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say it wouldn't surprise me if we don't find out for the next race if they don't change Leclerc's chassis, because it seems like they tried to throw everything at the car and the car just would not respond to whatever they were doing to it. So either the upgrades weren't correlating right or something, but there's something not right there. The rear end of that car was way too squirrely. The rear tires are literally screeching along and sliding over in the corners, and that's why they're wearing out. So definitely looked like something fundamental. The good news is if it's that obvious that you can see it, you should be able to diagnose and then fix it. It just didn't look like they didn't have enough time to do it here.
Yeah, I think that's a good call out, Andy. It'd be interesting to see if that's end up what something they do here pretty soon. All right, Cody, where you want to go next in the midfield? What you got?
Well, let's see here. We've got Pierre Gasly finishing in 10th place, getting that last point, which it's good for him to score a point, I suppose, but it's a story of what could have been, because Pierre Gasly qualified in 4th, which would have been particularly stellar if he didn't get a 6th place grid penalty after qualifying for impeding throughout qualifying multiple cars, but ended up getting the penalty for impeding Carlos Sainz. And 6th place grid penalty is a pretty big wallop when you're qualifying in 4th. And, he could have, I'm sure, scored many more points without that grid penalty. So kind of, screwed himself before the race even started there.
Yeah, Gasly isn't having the best of years, and maybe it's just his first year at Alpine, kind of figuring out the team and all that. But he is only 10 points behind Ocon, which is surprising because it feels like Ocon's been so much better this year. But I guess the reality is 10 points is a lot when you're really fighting for like 7 to 10 at best. So it will take a while for him to kind of overcome that lead that Ocon's got right now. But overall kind of disappointing day for Gasly. And then he had to have the double impeding penalty, getting the double minor essentially, to use a hockey term there. Was not a great start to his Sunday.
Speaking of Esteban Ocon, he almost would have had all the Spanish fans bearing down at him after that race if he had taken out Fernando Alonso when he did that late block. I saw that coming and I was like, oh no. And that would have been really ugly, taking out one of the two Spanish drivers at the Spanish Grand Prix. Not a good look.
Yeah, there were lots of Spanish flags in the stands, so you have to wonder, would they have like all descended upon the Alpine garage or something? Not advocating for that, definitely, but you never know.
Andy, anybody you want to touch on for the midfield?
I think it is kind of surprising the two Aston Martins, and they have been they've been the carriers of the second position. That no longer seems to be the case. It seems like now we're finally seeing where they probably really are. More disappointing. Alonso messes up his floor, and that put him back from qualifying, and there's just not enough race pace today here. I have to see. They now need to make another step. If they want to continue to be kind of where they were, because I think as we're going to talk about, the two Mercedes had themselves a very good day, and they are now ahead in their correlation work on those updates because they came out and had a great day.
Yeah, definitely Aston's worst weekend of the year. And, I'm sure Alonso never wants to finish behind Stroll. So that's just a little bit of a salt in the wound for
Except
sure.
this week, he did, seemingly.
Oh,
It had that weirdness of him seemingly able but unwilling to pass Lance Stroll and just wanting to do the rear gunner roll, which couldn't help but think was really strange. Normally, Fernando
yeah, good
Alonso
point.
is willing to claw for whatever he can get, but no, I guess if it's team owner's son right in front of you, oh, well, can't do that.
Yeah, good call out.
Signs is 18 seconds up the road, though, and there were like 4 laps left. There wasn't going to be any extra points except for his own score. So
yeah,
maybe he gets a pass here. And the timer on him hasn't gone off yet. He's not all about himself yet. He's all about the team right now.
For now.
For now, it's right. And touch on Checo Perez, as I mentioned, came up from 11th to start, finished in 4th. So I guess a good recovery drive. Max added another 14 points on his lead from his teammate there. So, what are we at now? Like 53 points between Verstappen and Checo Perez. So, 2 full races with the extra point for fastest lap between them, and then an extra point. So, Checo did pretty much all he could do. I don't know if he was going to catch the Mercedes the way they look today. Maybe with a few more laps, but not today.
It's almost up there on George Russell at the end, but he needed, I think, at least a couple more laps to get the job done.
Yeah, and I wonder if George had made a comment towards the end too that when he was chasing him down, like that he had more in there, and they're like, the pace you're at now, you'll be just fine. So George probably had a little bit more in the tank if he needed it. But yeah, just not Checo got good points. He's still firmly in second place, but I think that's his limit this year for sure.
Yeah, the Sergio championship campaign is, I think, pretty much suspended indefinitely at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I think at this point, all he can really hope for is to win at his home Grand Prix, and that'll be the highlight of his season, because I think Max is going to win every other race. All right, so speaking of winning, we'll move up to the podium where we find George Russell in 3rd, Lewis Hamilton in 2nd to give it a Mercedes double podium, and Max Verstappen in 1st, and no one is close to him. So we'll start off with Russell, who I mentioned Checo with a good recovery drive. George Russell, that much better, starting in 12th, finishing in 3rd. So excellent drive from him. Especially considering how he started his day on the reconnaissance lap, somehow finding the way into the gravel. Not the way you want to start your day, but damn, he recovered well. And Lewis, reinvigorated, and Toto said it on the grid walk before the race, that Toto had noticed, like, he seemed feisty today, seemed like a little bit of the old Lewis. So I guess that's good to see. Hopefully that could mean maybe some battles at some point later in the season where we get a little bit of excitement at the front of the grid. But Cody, what do you think about Mercedes double podium today?
I think it's definitely a step up for them. It looks like, I don't know if you can hand it all off to the car upgrades being the cause, but it definitely looks like they're moving in the right direction with, being near the top of the pecking order again. I am really happy to see Lewis Hamilton in P2 there. I would really hope that he finishes really well so that he stays in the sport as long as he can. I think a couple really bad years like, Sebastian Vettel had, and he'll throw in the towel. But fingers crossed that maybe, once we get over to, like, say, Brazil again, where the Mercedes looked so good last year, that, maybe George or Lewis will have another legitimate shot at a win. Anything to take one away from Red Bull at this point.
Yeah, you mentioned racing a few more years. I've already seen the articles coming out that Hamilton's reinvigorated after the Spanish Grand Prix to sign an extension. So I was like, oh, great. Can't wait. But I think they fared fairly well. Mercedes did last year in Spain as well. So, you know, it looks like they made some steps in the right direction. But I think I need to see it another couple more tracks to believe it. Andy, what do you think about Mercedes Day overall?
The side pods never felt so good, apparently. Yeah, both drivers seemingly much in favor of the upgrade and the pivot. And, you can only keep this sleeping giant of a team asleep for so long. And it boggled my mind why they struggled with that zero side pod concept as long as they have. And now that they've switched, at least in the 2 races that we've seen, small sample size notwithstanding, and totally understand, they've done really well. So is this a harbinger of things to come? I don't know. In terms of now, are they going to be the ones that maybe actually give Max a fight at some point at a track where the super duper DRS is not as exciting? Possibly. Cody, you mentioned Brazil. I think that's a great example. I'm thinking of Singapore. I'm thinking of Hungary. I'm definitely not thinking of Las Vegas because that track, Max Verstappen's going to win by 2 miles at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that one's in the bag, as they say.
Unless he gets distracted in Vegas the night before. There's always that possibility.
Yeah, it's literally all we can hope for. Yeah.
Somehow I don't think it'll matter.
Cody, so you're wearing the Red Bull hats. I'll let you talk about Verstappen dominance here.
Yeah, just, week after week, he makes it look really easy and finished way out in front. At one point, he comes on the radio, like the hards aren't working super great. I feel like I'm slipping and sliding around. Meanwhile, he's like 20 seconds way out in front of the next car, and he's on old hards. Making it look easy. Seemed like he was bored, maybe even falling asleep at the wheel a little bit again because he got the black and white flag near the end of the race for track limit violations. One more would have netted him, I think, like a 5-second penalty. Wouldn't have mattered if he got it anyway because he was still far enough out in front that he would have still taken that P1. But it seemed like the team was not wanting that mark against him for the weekend, and they were asking him to not go for the fastest lap because they were afraid he was going to get that last infraction. He went for it anyway. He got it, and then they were like, "Okay, are you happy now? Can you please keep it in the white lines?" But
so I guess,
totally.
Andy, do you know the answer to this question? If let's say he set the fastest lap, but he would have gotten that removed if he had gone over the line again and then gotten a penalty, right? So he would have not ended up with the fastest.
So the way the rule is worded, had he set his fastest lap on a lap that he goes over track limits, the time is deleted and he would have lost that point. If he had set the fastest lap and then on a subsequent lap broken the track limits and gotten a penalty, he would have kept the point for fastest lap because it wasn't he has to be the infraction lap in order for him to lose the point.
Okay. And one thing I did notice too, especially after the race, was Hamilton and Verstappen seemed pretty like good old chums and laughing it up and joking around. So, for all that hate and vitriol that you see between fans of the two on Twitter, it seems like they're pretty cool with each other. So maybe fans could follow suit. I don't know. Sounds kind of crazy.
Well, let's say time heals all wounds.
Let's see what happens when there's not 24 seconds between the two of them, and then we'll see. But for now, at least, hey, if they're cordial, I'm all for let's be cordial to each other.
Yeah. Maybe they're just like, you know what? We're both really good at what we do. We're multimillionaires, and we're cool. Like, it's all good.
You've got your corner of Monaco. I've got my corner of Monaco. It's all fine.
It's not so bad. All right, if you got nothing else from the race, we will take a quick break, pay some bills, and be back to recap some driver standings, team standings, fan emails, our weekly awards, and then our Choose Your Fighter results, which didn't look so good for one of you two. But we'll be right back. Welcome back to Season 5, Episode 16 of the Outlap F1 Podcast, part of the Ship Studios Podcast Network, and this is the 2023 Spanish Grand Prix race review. Once again, I'm your host, James, along with Cody and Andy from the North Woods, and we are back to talk some Spanish Grand Prix. We are now going to go over to Cody for the recap of the driver standings as we stand right now.
All right. So your driver standings as of the Spanish Grand Prix. Max Verstappen driving for Red Bull, just continuing to extend his lead out in first place, now with 170 points. In second place, his teammate Sergio Perez at Red Bull, falling back just a little bit farther, but still making good points. He is at 117. Fernando Alonso holding on to third place with Aston Martin at 99 points. Lewis Hamilton, the first of the two Mercedes drivers, with 87 points. He's in fourth place. Behind him, his teammate George Russell in fifth place with 65 points. Carlos Sainz in sixth place with Ferrari at 58 points, and his teammate right behind him in seventh place, Charles Leclerc with 42 points. Eighth place, quite a ways back from his teammate, Lance Stroll, driving for Aston Martin, has only 35 points. And then ninth and 10th are our two Alpine drivers, Esteban Ocon in ninth with 25 points, and Pierre Gasly in 10th with 15 points.
All right, very good. Thank you. Andy, you want to run us through the recap of the team standings, please?
Yep, out in P1 in a universe of their own. Red Bull Racing Powertrains, 287 points. Followed in P2 now by Mercedes. They overtake Aston Martin and are now in the P2 spot on 152 points. Aston Martin dropped down to P3. They're on 134 points. P4 is Ferrari on 100 points even. P5 is Alpine. They are up to 40. P6 is McLaren. They remain on 17. P7 is Haas. They have 8 points. P8 is Alfa Romeo, who also have 8 points, so a tie there, but Haas keeping the tiebreaker for the time being. P9 is AlphaTauri with 2 points, and in P10 is Williams with the 1 solitary point.
All right, thank you, Andy. Now we move into our fan email segment. And as always, we start off with Rachel Fleming, emailed in once again. Thank you, Rachel. She says, so once again, no yellow flags, no retirements, no challenge to Max, and Lando messing up. Ouch. Isn't F1 in 2023 becoming more and more predictable? God, I am hoping Merck can sort out their one-lap pace. But question marks may start to appear over Bottas after another very poor weekend. Alfa and Audi will not be amused that he comes 19th out of 20, and yet his teammate finishes 10 places ahead, and there doesn't seem to be any clear excuses. So something we touched on earlier, but to dive in a little bit here, I think that's an excellent call out. You know that Audi's going to want to make a splash. If Bottas doesn't shape up, will he be shipping out? Cody, what do you think?
I think that they're almost certainly going to, unless he makes some massive turnaround, I think Bottas will be dumped before the regulation change for 2026. I think they're going to keep him around to try to use his experience to get the team going in the right direction as much as possible before then. But like I said, unless he suddenly turns into a massive superstar, which if he hasn't by now, I don't think he's ever going to. I can't see him sticking around past 2025.
Andy, any debate there?
Not much of one. Unless he's doing something behind the scenes that is just amazing and we just aren't seeing it because they're busy building all of this infrastructure up. It doesn't make sense to keep him or his salary in that seat. There's lots of young up-and-coming talent. Alfa Romeo has an academy that they've been building, so look for some of those names to start creeping up the list if this doesn't improve, because, this doesn't look good right now.
Yes, Bottas at a rally track near you coming soon, potentially. Or maybe an IndyCar stint. That seems to be a popular thing these days for former washed-up F1 drivers, so we shall see. All right, Dave Doherty. Oh, go ahead, Andy.
IndyCar's got lots of concrete. It's more than happy to accommodate former F1 drivers.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. All right, Dave Doherty emails in once again. Thanks, Dave. Says, your thoughts on the strategy that we saw on the 3-stop pitting. Well, I got super excited in the beginning of the race when they mentioned that 3-stop is a possibility. I love 2-stoppers, and 3-stoppers usually mean awesomeness. Didn't really turn out that way. Andy, any thoughts on that strategy?
Well, what you didn't end up with is you didn't have some sort of intervening virtual safety car or safety car to really kind of make those strategies hit home. When you're trying a three stopper, what you're hoping is that you're timing your final stop with one of those types of events. That just didn't happen. No yellow flags, no safety cars. It all just cycled through. The two stoppers basically ended up winning out because they saved the 20 seconds.
Yep. Cody, anything different?
I think the only reason we got the three stops here is because the hards were not lasting any longer than any of the other tires. So you almost, seemed like you could barely squeeze by with a two stop if you're making the mediums, or the hards, I guess, last a long time. But a lot of drivers looked like they were going to the softs at the end there to pick up a little bit of extra pace. But yeah, same thing as Andy. I don't think that there was enough intervening events to really make the three stop as interesting as it could have been.
Unfortunately. All right, and the Formula emailed in saying, we talked about this last week. Spain is a good measure of Merck's upgrades. I think they are real. Not Red Bull contenders, but they should be on for a P2 constructors finish now, where they stand. Another week, another Checo blunder. I feel like I keep writing this because it keeps happening. Poor qualifying, poor final stint of the race. Red Bull cannot be pleased with his form. I wouldn't be surprised if they are quietly exploring other options for 2024. What was going on with Charles' strategy if Ferrari looked clueless on what to do with him? Yes, Ferrari did look clueless. That is not a surprise. I, too, do not want to know what was going on with Charles' strategy. It was just bad. But let's dig into the Checo part. That could be an interesting tidbit to talk about. Cody, once again, you got the Red Bull hat on, so you're getting the question. Do you think Red Bull needs to look at some other options for next season?
I don't really think that they're in any rush to look for a replacement for Checo. While he is perhaps not performing, as well as Max is in, his own category for driver quality. We can't forget that Checo's already won 2 races so far this year, and at least one of those, Azerbaijan, looked like that he beat Max just on pace. So he's not doing awful. He's still second in the standings. And I don't think that Red Bull is going to feel the need to look for another driver so long as they're still winning that drivers championship and Checo is performing well enough that they still pull in that constructors championship. And with how things are looking right now, with how dominant that car is, they're gonna keep him in there just because he's got the experience with the car. And I imagine he doesn't want to go anywhere because he's driving the best car on the grid.
Yeah. Yeah, as long as him and Max stay good, I don't see him going anywhere anytime soon. For all the reasons you just said. Andy, anything different?
I mean, the alternative, if they got rid of him, would be back to a young driver from the academy. There are some good names that are coming through. Liam Lawson is probably the closest to it, but you're going back to maybe an Albon situation or a Gasly situation. Is he ready for it? Checo answers the bill. He gives them what they want. I don't think they were looking for a championship challenger. And unfortunately, he's just not up to it. So I think Red Bull are more than right now content. And if Checo wants to keep driving the best car on the grid, I think they are a match made in heaven right now.
Well said. All right, let's go ahead and move into our weekly awards. And as always, we start off with the rubbish. Andy, I'll hand off to you first.
My rubbish award is the Yuki Tsunoda penalty for a race with no double yellows and no incidents. We needed to throw one in just apparently for fun. It took me a while to even remember what this was for, and it really kind of screwed up at the end. I didn't even remember it getting announced, but whatever. FIA doing what they do. Gunther Steiner getting in trouble for actually suggesting that we actually have, professional all the time, full-time stewards. What a concept. But he gets wrapped on the knuckles for it. I guess I'll leave that there.
Cody, what do you got? What do you got for your rubbish?
My rubbish award goes to Gasly this week for that 6th place grid penalty he got during qualifying. Turned what would have been a fantastic start to the race into just scraping by for that last point. A big story of what could have been, and a little bit of a disappointing Spanish Grand Prix for him.
Very good. For my rubbish award, I'm going with Ferrari. Yeah, we know they struggle with high-speed corners, and there are some of those here. So great, whatever. But really, Ferrari just sucks right now. And that sucked to type into the agenda, and it sucks more to say it. But it's pretty true. Maybe they'll finish P4 in the constructors, I guess. But to finish behind Aston and Mercedes and Red Bull, and just now they have completely pivoted. So really, are they going to be contenders next year? Probably not. The year after, I don't know. I really don't. I just really feeling it right now. Things aren't looking great. Not really seeing the light at the end of a tunnel right now. Any light I do see, I think, is just an oncoming train. So just rough times to be a Ferrari fan, and that just is what it is right now.
Definitely not mincing words.
I was going to say I still think something with that car is solvable, and it's fundamental, and I think that they are smart. They're smart guys, but I think Vasseur has a full plate on his. He's got to completely change a culture that's been built for a very long time. So trying to do that and be competitive at the same time, it's almost an impossible task. So give it time, stay the course. I think they will.
Andy,
be back.
when you say that they're smart guys, all I can think about is the current popular gif going on right now with you have to help me with the comedian's name, where he's just like, "You sure about that? You sure about that?" I don't think I'm sure about it. All right, let's move on to analysis paralysis. This one's kind of tough today. So Cody, what do you got?
I didn't really have a super clear analysis paralysis award, so I'm gonna kind of split hairs and go with Ferrari on this one. For starting on the hard tires, that as it turns out were degrading so badly for them that they couldn't outlast the Mercedes on soft tires. They couldn't really decide what they wanted to do either, because they started on the hards, they went off the hards, and then they went back to the hards at the end of the race after seeing that they didn't really perform that well. I found that to be a little bit confusing.
Agreed. I went with Ferrari as well because I couldn't really think of anybody else that really kind of fit that. And, this is basically Ferrari's award. So when in doubt, you go with Ferrari for analysis paralysis, and it works this week. 60% of the time, it works every time. Andy, do you got analysis paralysis for this weekend?
I put in the agenda. I may have to pass, but I guess if we're all going to pile on poor Ferrari, I guess I'll join in. I guess it's the closest thing is why would you start on hard tires and not go long? But apparently they couldn't. So, like I said, fundamental problem with the car.
Thank you, Andy. Moving into the Dark Horse Award. Andy, I'll let you start this one off.
I'm giving this one to Zhao Gran Yu. Definitely points, number one, for Alfa Romeo, which is big for them. Any points for them is a big deal. And two, he was completely outshining all the efforts of his teammate throughout basically the entirety of the race. So good on you, Zhao, and good on you, Alfa Romeo, for 2 big points.
That's a good one. Cody, who you got for Dark Horse?
My Dark Horse is Lando Norris, at least during qualifying. Did not see the McLaren qualifying P3 at all. It came out of nowhere to me. And it made me really excited to see what Lando Norris was going to do during the race. Of course, that didn't really pan out. But I think that qualifying performance alone is enough to warrant the Dark Horse Award.
Fair enough. For me, I'm going with George Russell, who went from the gravel during a reconnaissance lap to the podium for one hell of a recovery drive for old Georgie boy there. All right, driver of the day. I'm just going to go ahead and continue to copy and paste Max into this award because he is awesome and has an awesome car and is going to continue to win a lot of races. Cody, who you got?
I got Max, Super Max. I really wanted to put Lewis for finishing P2, but with how far out in front Max Verstappen finished and seems to be finishing week in, week out, until something happens where he doesn't win the race, it's going to be hard to argue not putting him in that driver of the day spot.
Agreed there. Andy, who do you got?
This is a clean sweep. And then I also realized that I got all my branding and my what I thought was a funny joke at 9 o'clock this morning. It's not that funny, so I'm just going to leave it unsaid. Max will get my driver of the day.
Fair enough, Andy. All right, Cody, I'm going to hand it off to you to go through our prediction results. How'd that turn out for you, pal?
For me, it turned out really well this week. Now, I do have to throw in the caveat that despite that I got the qualifying time and the fastest lap time, they were nowhere close to what the actual pole time and fastest lap times were. I just happened to guess a little faster than Andy, which netted me those 2 points. I also got the point for calling Max Verstappen as pole sitter, Max for winning the race, so the P1 podium, the Max for getting the fastest lap during the race, and the prop bet. There were more than 25 overtakes during the race. Andy, so that got me 6 points for our predictions. Andy got 3 points. He also got Max Verstappen for the pole sitter P1 winning the race, and he also guessed over the average for overtakes during the race, so he got the prop bet as well. And that puts me at 8 points so far this season for our predictions, and Andy is at 6. So I overtook. It's a competition for me.
I got some work to do.
Yeah, well done, Cody. And at the end of the year, the W's all show the same, so you don't have to mention the part about how you were still way far off. If you won the point, you won the point, sir.
Yeah. So it is a winner take all.
Oh, see, this is the thing. He knows me so well that he knew I had that those times were 6 seconds off, and he was just going to beat me to it.
Yeah, it's Price doing the Price is Right.
All right, I'll hand it off to Andy first for any final thoughts on the weekend before our week off here. What do you got?
Well, I mean, I'm enjoying the view for sure. Sadly, no one else can really see it. I will try to turn the camera on, so if you've stuck with the video this long, hey, look, I am actually here. Here's our Instagram-esque lighting. Here's our real rustic cabin in the background. But yeah, thanks for sticking with us. We appreciate it. We will be back in Canada. It's not far from where I am, so believe it or not, I can probably touch Canada from here. Yeah, we'll be back in a couple weeks. I won't be in Canada. We'll be back. You'll see my normal bland drab background of my apartment yet again, but this is probably the most exotic locale that I've ever done a recording from, and it's been fun to do.
Andy, that is a lot of wood. Be careful with any sort of open flames.
Exactly.
Cody, final thoughts on the weekend heading into week off and in Canada.
All in all, I thought the Spanish Grand Prix was maybe a little boring. No yellow flags, no safety cars, no nothing like that. But at least there were a lot of overtakes, and at least Max didn't lap the entire field. So looking forward to maybe a little bit of a closer competition in Canada, but probably not.
Yeah, the Canadian Grand Prix is typically one of my favorites. Definitely high up on my list of races I want to go attend for sure. So I do look forward to that. I won't get to watch the race live, unfortunately. It falls on Father's Day, and I actually get to celebrate that as a father for the first time. So I'll be at the Cubs game with the little one, because the sooner the better that I can teach him that being a pain of sports sucks, and usually just get your heart broken.
Like a good time,
so, hopefully it's a nice day with some good weather. But yeah, so I'll be watching that race on record. But I do look forward to it. And the Spanish Grand Prix wasn't the best, but it's still F1, so I still enjoy it. I just got to figure out something else to root for, because a new champion's not going to happen, and Ferrari doing well is not going to happen. So I'll find something else to keep me going.
Alonso.
Yeah, I guess I can root for Alonso. All right, well, I think that is it for our Spanish Grand Prix race review. Thank you for listening. We will hear from us soon, probably about a week and a half, for the preview of the Canadian Grand Prix. That'll be with Cody and Andy doing their thing.